The constantly changing guidelines for this upcoming school year have been hard to follow, even for those who do it for a living. Krista Torralva, an education reporter with the San Antonio Express-News, says she spent much of the summer keeping a lookout for when the state would issue guidance to local school districts on reopening campuses.
We kept on hearing that they would release their guidance, in June and then July and then later in July.
The matter wasn't exactly settled even when the rules did come.
After weeks of waiting, the Texas Education Agency releasing guidance for reopening schools across the state.
The state originally, when it did release its guidance this month, said that the school districts needed to open up for families who wanted in-person learning. Well, there was a lot of backlash to that. And
that initial requirement mandated schools open classrooms after a 3-week transition period or risk losing state funding.
Parents and teachers have some big decisions ahead.
Some teachers say the TEA's plans might be a little too rigid when it comes to the health and safety of the students and staff.
But a week after the TEA released its initial plan to reopen schools, the agency then issued an update.
Typically, schools fall under the authority of the state of Texas and local school districts, not the city of San Antonio or Bexar County. But today, the Texas Education Agency announced that the local public health officials can decide whether to keep Texas schools open for in-person instruction this fall without risking state education funding.
Mayor Ron Nierenberg announced the creation of a task force made up of students, teachers, parents, and other experts with the purpose of helping guide local schools on how to reopen safely. Then, just a couple of days later,
the Texas Education Agency updating guidelines for the upcoming school year today. Districts can now postpone in-person learning for the first 4 weeks of school.
And if your area is still really bad, then you can apply for an additional 4 weeks of remote learning for a total of 8 weeks. But then that's it.
Locally, with new power given to the department by the state, San Antonio Metro Health issued a directive prohibiting face-to-face classes until after Labor Day.
Schools initially moved their calendar dates earlier because the thought process was, if we have to shut down again, we have that time to do so. But then in San Antonio, at least, and some other hotspots in the state, that emergency was now.
Then, 11 days after Metro Health issued its order, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton stepped in.
Today, Attorney General Ken Paxton weighing in once more. In a statement, the state attorney general says local health authorities, quote, may not issue sweeping orders closing schools for the sole purpose of preventing future COVID-19 infections, end quote.
Shortly after Paxton's announcement, the TEA updated its guidance to say that school districts will lose funding if they keep classrooms closed because of a local health mandate. School districts are still allowed to remain closed for a total of 8 weeks with TEA approval. Torralva has been closely following the back and forth, saying those on both sides of the argument have brought up valid points.
I understand, both sides and how and what they want and what they feel like they're losing by being remote. And I think that the educators feel the same way. It's just hard to balance. How do you bring those families back in safely and also consider the safety of the teachers?
And while the debate is raging on, district leaders are scrambling to keep up with the changes and adapt.
Some school districts are saying, there was a plan back in June, and then we scrapped it to abide by the TEA's guidelines. And now with this change in the guidelines, we're revisiting those plans. We're pulling them out of our, digital trash can, dusting them off and starting all over again with those plans.